Man, saying this changes everything feels like the biggest understatement of the decade. I mean, this thing is the shit. Howdy everybody, welcome back to Sunday Coffee, Guitars and Tones. This is the show where we just hang out, have our favorite cup of coffee, take a breath and talk about guitars, tones, gear and all of that good stuff. So, did you see it? 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 I hope you saw my video this week on the absolutely amazing Two Notes GENOME software, the 2.0 version. Yeah, with multi-layered amp capture technology. What? Yep. If you haven't seen that video, go and check it out after this video because it will blow your mind. So look, it got me thinking about the whole amp capture thing and just the technology thing in the guitar world. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm super excited. You can already see. This is just my second cup of coffee. By the way, if you're new to the show, I drink decaf. Because of a health condition, by the way, just in case you're wondering. And I've got this much spring, yeah. Got as much spring as Zebedee out of, Magic Roundabout today. Anyways, so this multi-layered amp profiling technology. It is an enormous leap. No, I'm not even going to say leap. I'm going to say this is an enormous jump. This is literally like a Superman jump forward in the whole kind of amp capturing world, as far as I'm concerned. Because, your standard amp capture, which is your NAM, your Kemper, Tonex, etc., right, is basically just flat. It's a photograph. This has just brought it into the realm of a 3D model. Yep. It bypassed everything in between. And the cool thing was when the guys at Two Notes sent it to me, and thank you so much guys for sending it. It's been such an incredible pleasure and honor playing this because it just sounds incredibly good. So huge thanks to my buddies over at Two Notes for sending it over. I do appreciate it. When they sent it over and I opened it up and I realized what was going on, man, the grin on my face. Yep, it was this big. Literally, my eyes were just like, holy crap, what have they done? You serious? I mean, look, they haven't just gone to the next level where they are modeling every stage of your gain control on your amp or just the master volume. You can set it up so that you can have every single position of every single knob on your amplifier. So that means your gain, your master, your EQ, bass, middle, treble, and then your presence, your resonance, and if you have any special knobs like, take over the universe, yeah. You can model everything basically, which is just crazy. It's so cool that they actually did that. Look, on one of my amplifiers, there are actually a couple of my amplifiers which I'm looking at, which are behind the camera here. You can't see them right now. Right, but the two Jet City amps which I modified, they both have negative feedback controls, and it's a variable control. I can model that. In fact, that's just given me an idea. I'm actually going to do that. Look, I'm going to do more videos on the software anyway, so I think I'll actually use one of those amps because they've got some unique controls on them. And that'd be pretty cool to do. Can you imagine that? Having kind of an amp model which is, or an amp capture I should say, which actually captures the nuances of the negative feedback control on your amplifier. What? All right. This just got really surreal. How cool is that? I think this is a huge leap in technology, and it's very, very exciting. Anyways, let me have a sip of coffee. Let me take a breath because I know I've just been talking today because I'm so excited. So cheers, guys. That's good. That's really, really good. So this got me thinking about the fact that this is just the first iteration of it. This is just the first generation of the software which Two Notes have put out, Genome 2.0. What happens when we get to 2.1 and 2.2 and 2.5 and 3 and 4? That is really exciting. And you know, Neural Amp Modeler have just released a version 2 of their amp capture process. And that's supposed to be even more accurate than the version 1. What's exciting is that Genome 2.0 capture is actually NAM based. Because when you open up the Capture Studio, you have two options. You can either do a static NAM capture, just a single shot of your amplifier, or you can do the dynamic one, which is called Paradex. But Paradex, when you listen to the tones which are being sent through your amplifier, they sound very, 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 very similar to the ones that the NAM capture process actually sends through your amplifier. So it's based on the same technology, right? So what happens when they incorporate the 2.0 into the software? Yeah. You know, part of me is thinking, this thing is going to kind of render a lot of the capture platforms not obsolete, because they'll still be valuable, but they're going to feel a little bit dated. And I hate saying that, because there are some other capture platforms which I do like using, you know, and I've done like NAM captures off my amplifiers as well. And I put them onto hardware units. Now, those of you who notice my eyes probably caught on to where I'm going with this now. What happens when Paradex manages to get onto a piece of hardware? Yeah, baby. What do you reckon? What's that going to do to the world of amp captures? Can you imagine having an amp capture which actually has modeled all the nuances of your favorite amplifier, but as a digital model? Now, we can imagine that because we have some incredible modeling technology out there. So if you guys have been to my channel in the last year, you'll know that I am a huge fan and user of the Fractal gear. That stuff, you know, I'm not even going to say it's amp-like. It feels exactly the same to me. You know, playing my Fractal units and playing amplifiers, I use my Fractal units so often, you know, and then I plug into my amplifiers sometimes now, which feels kind of wrong. But honestly, the modeling in the Fractal stuff, it's incredibly cool. So we already have phenomenal modeling technology, and it's on a level which, you know, we've never had it before. Genome, right? First of all, it's a couple of things, right? It reminds me a lot of the Fractalverse, because the modeling technology in there, the amplifiers they've actually modeled, not the captures, the models in there are phenomenally good. Yep. When the guys sent the software to me, and thank you so much to Two Notes, they've been so awesome. They sent me the Genome software, and I've been playing with it for a few weeks now. As soon as I plugged into it, it was like, whoa. I've tried some great amp software, but this? Holy crap, dude. Yeah, this is next level. You know, the amplifiers react like they're supposed to in terms of when you turn knobs and things like that. And, you know, there's a certain interaction which happens. So if I take the SLO, for example, right? So I have my SLO 30 back there, my custom built one. There's this thing that happens where, you know, you've got a sweet spot with the gain and the master. You know, they don't necessarily sound the best when everything is on 10, especially with the gain and the master on those amplifiers. So on my SLO30, right, everything lives at 7. Yeah, oh, well, like that. It'll look like that to you guys. I'm looking at it the other way, like I'm looking at an amp. So everything lives at 7 on that amplifier, right? And that's the Zen spot. It's just the perfect tone for the amplifier. But when you turn up the gain and when you turn up the master, it doesn't necessarily give you more gain or more volume. It just thickens up the sound. It changes the tone of the amplifier. And there's a lot of like software which kind of models the Soldano thing, but it doesn't get that quite accurately right. This software did, which was phenomenal to see. They also have an amplifier in there called the Albion. I think it's the Albion 59, which is basically a Marshall 1959, the Plexi, right, the Super Lead. And that was one of the first ones that I tried from the modeling side of things. And I noticed there was a little switch at the bottom which said a low and high or something like that, you know. So I was like, I wonder, clicked it. Yeah. It was like they put a Jose gain stage in front of that amplifier. It was phenomenal. Turn everything to 10. Yeah, it does exactly what Plexi is supposed to do when you turn everything to 10. So, you know, they've got the modeling side of things absolutely bang on, right? And then coupled with that, you've got all their cabs, right? Which is hundreds of cabs that they've done. You know, they've modeled and stuff, and you can move the microphones and all that stuff, which is pretty awesome. But then they've added Paradex now. Multi-layered amp captures. I would love to see this in a floor unit. Can you imagine that? Oh, man. And it also got me thinking, you know, I don't know if they have plans to do this or anything like that, but if they do that at some stage, what's going to happen with something like the Fractal? I wonder if they're going to do like a multi-layered, you know, amp capture for the next generation of Fractal unit, you know, the AXFX4 and things like that. That would be next level as well, wouldn't it? And it would make sense, you know. Now, static amp captures are still valid because it's your snapshot. You know, most of the time people have their settings on their amp and they just want a picture of that, and you know, you just plug into that. You don't screw with the EQ or anything because you know that your amp is set how it's set. You know, I don't go around to my amps and start changing dials most of the time. No, they get set and then they basically get switched on. That's how it works down here, baby. Ain't gonna be no kind of, you know, fiddling with dials and shit like that. Plug in and play. Yeah, that's how I want it. Right? So static amp captures work really well anyways, right? But having the ability to actually turn the knobs and them doing exactly what they're supposed to, right, that's an absolute game changer. Yep. That is just super, super, super cool. And it works. That's the really cool thing about it. It works really, really well. And it's mind-blowing that they've done it. You know, I was kind of like thinking about this anyways, because another company had hinted at something like this about 6 or 7 months ago. They'd got in touch and had said that one of their new units was coming out, and you know, on the spec sheet it said like multi-layered amp captures on there. So I got really excited, and it never happened. You know, I didn't get the unit to do a review of. Many people did, and it's out there and stuff. I won't tell you what it is, but it's out there. But there was no mention of the multi-layered amp capture, so I'm assuming that it wasn't actually added to the unit for whatever reason. So I was kind of like, I really wanted to try that out, and then this happened. the universe is looking out for me, you know, it's hearing my voice when I'm thinking out loud. And it's delivering, you know. So I think it's a really exciting time for us guitar players, because there have been so many technological advances, and they've been really good advances. I mean, think about the fact that actually what they're able to do with the amp captures now with Paradex is to model all the nuances of your amplifier. What happens when they get to a stage where they can model like switches as well? So if you have like an extra gain switch or something like that, like on some of my amplifiers, I have a Jose clipping diode switch on there with a couple of positions. What happens when you're able to capture that as part of your amp profile as well? That would be crazy cool, right? Takes it to the next level. I'd love to know your thoughts about this as well. You know, do you guys use amp captures, or do you just use amp modeling? What's your take on amp modeling versus amp captures? You know, most of the time I'm actually using amp modeling because I'm plugged into my Fractal stuff, because I just adore the sound of that. Or if I am going to use an amp, you know, I'm going to use one of my real amps because they're here. But I totally see the value in having amp captures, because if you don't have a space like this, you know, which is dedicated and where you can store all of your gear and basically just switch it on, and you have like an amp switcher like my wonderful KHE here, which, you know, I can go to like 8 of my amplifiers instantly. Then if you have everything you need on, let's say, your PC or your Mac, or a hardware unit which can actually do that, which is about yay big, and you're limited for space, man, that's valuable to a lot of people, right? I get that. I totally get that. It's also exciting because it got me thinking, all right, what's going to happen when at some stage they start modeling the characteristics of different tubes as well? And hopefully, you know, some geeky person will do that, you know, geeky thinking like me. Yeah. Because this is the type of thing that consumes my mind. Yeah. But, you know, different tubes, they have different characteristics. I was having a conversation with somebody recently about Mullard tubes and GE tubes, and, you know, the tubes which you got in old Marshall amps from like the 1960s and 1970s and stuff. I've been kind of getting Mullard tubes for years because they sound phenomenal, especially in a Marshall style amplifier. And anyone who says, oh yeah, JJ sound, it sounds exactly the same, just put a JJ in like position 1 of your amp. No, it doesn't. It doesn't sound anywhere near the same as like an old Mullard tube. That's just nonsense. Okay, I have a large collection of Mullard tubes and GEs and Sylvanias and all sorts of stuff. You know, Mazda tubes which were built in the Mullard factory. JJs do not sound the same. That's absolute nonsense. If anyone ever tells you that, just say, Jay said that is absolute nonsense, because he's got lots of Mullard tubes. They'll say to you, who's Jay? But, you know, for someone like me, that's exciting. Well, what happens when they're able to model the characteristics and have that in the digital realm, and it's working like your tube amps, you know, and how it all interacts together? It's very, very, very exciting. Very exciting. And also, like I said, with the Fractal stuff, I'm so looking forward to the next gen of all the Fractal stuff as well, because I adore that stuff. I use it so much, you know. Whenever I'm kind of like demoing something, that's the first thing I turn on, because, you know, I have either the XFX3 there or the FM9 under my desk. I've got a couple of other units on the side here, the FM3 and the AM4. Yeah, you know, AM4, if I'm traveling or something, yeah, that goes in the suitcase. Because it's easy and it's great and it sounds incredible, right? So yeah, just lots of kind of thoughts in my head about this. But, you know, mainly I wanted to kind of tell you about the Genome software, how excited I am about it. This probably comes across on the video. I don't know. Does it? Let me know in the comments, right? Do I seem a little bit excitable today? Maybe. But honestly, you know, huge thanks to everyone at Two Notes for sending me the software. It's just absolutely phenomenal using it, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to do more videos on it. So my thanks to Ross and Jeremy and the whole team over at Two Notes. Cheers to you guys. You've done just an incredible job. If you want to check this technology out, go and check it out on the Two Notes website. I'm not just saying that because, hey, I did a video on it. Honestly, I'm blown away by what they've done with this. Really am. And, you know, I'm just looking at my amps down there and thinking, I'm going to profile a couple more amps and I'm going to profile a negative feedback control, which just, that's mind-blowing. Yeah, that's totally cool. All right. I shall leave that with you because that's some food for thought. Have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know if you did. And let me know your thoughts about all of this good stuff. Alrighty, guys and girls. Enjoy your coffees. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. And I shall see you soon with another one. Have a great day for now. Bye for now.